Demon here. Okay, so I got an article from Kotaku on Kingdom Come. They're trying to rationalize its popularity and its massive sales. Kotaku is one of those websites, the several websites that coordinated to smear gamers during the Gamergate, fiasco, I'll call it, because it just blew up into something that it wasn't, and then since they control the media, and people like them control the media, they were able to control the narrative and smear anyone that criticized them and their lack of authenticity, sincerity, and objectivity as, racist or haters or alt-right is what they call them now, and a bunch of other nonsense. Um, I, I saw the writing on the wall a couple years before Gamergate happened, around 2012. I stopped going to mainstream gaming sites and I started going to independent YouTube channels and other people because they were just more real and more honest. They weren't bought off or trying to virtue signal for some political higher power. It's so when Gamergate happened, I wasn't surprised. I was very disappointed and I felt sad for gamers, but I was not surprised at all. These people are nasty. They're not gamers themselves. They never were. And these people, that was right around the time of Gamergate 2014 when the Kickstarter for this game happened. They've had their sights set on Kingdom Come for a while, and now that it's selling in the millions, they're trying to rationalize its success, and that's the first phase, a type of denial, and pretty soon they'll be trying to bring it down in some way or smear the game or attack it all over again. And we see some little jabs of that in this article, which I've skimmed through previously. So let me share this article from SJW Kotaku with you. So it's Kingdom Come owes its popularity to realism and conservative politics. Skip through the background information. Head right over to this segment here, his story. The other side of Kingdom Come's appeal is thornier. The game is historically based, set in Bohemia, now the Western Czech Republic, during the time of the Holy Roman Empire. And the game's developers say they've even replicated topography and individual buildings from the region. Here's some pictures of the architecture they're trying to mimic. That's such beautiful architecture. So much better than contemporary architecture these days. I've actually read an article about why contemporary architecture, which is aesthetically inferior in every way to classical architecture, why that seems to have why taxpayer money goes to make these buildings. If you've seen the NATO headquarters, it's hideous. It's absolutely disgusting. And like most SJW things, and I do believe it's related to this SJW mindset, it's about subverting your expectations. I mean, if you look at contemporary architecture, instead of drawing your eyes to the sky and inspiring you, the buildings look like they're upside down or bloated or teetering or something. I mean, it's all about subversion and being like, what? How'd they do that? And no one cares about that. But the contemporary architects lobbied the government to get government contracts for their type of architecture. If you have connections in government, then you will get what you want. And that's why we see so much contemporary architecture instead of Gothic architecture or classical architecture these days. And it's ugly, fugly, in fact. Okay, back to the article. However, since long before the game came out, there's been debate about exactly which elements of history the game's developers prioritize. Much of that debate concerned Warhorse's 2014 and 2015 proclamations that the game wouldn't contain people of color because, according to director Daniel Vavra, there were no black people in medieval Bohemia, period. People then pointed to historical texts and art that suggested actually there might have been Moors in the region, as they were definitely present in Europe at the time. Okay, I just want to stop here. First of all, the word might, that's a key word. There might have been. Second of all, the Moors were from North Africa. They were dark-skinned, and they were invaders. They would invade the southern shore of Europe. They'd kidnap fishermen and farmers, and they'd sell them into slavery. They were people of conquest and looters and pillagers. If there were any Moors in ancient Bohemia at the time, they would be as invaders, they'd be as enemies. And maybe a few settled and stayed, but you know, they weren't popular. They weren't liked. They were menaces in history. So it's not like these are, or you know, immigrants coming to make a new life in Bohemia and become Bohemians themselves. They came under hostile reasons. All right, back to the article. It's hard to say definitively one way or another. That's interesting. Stopping from the article here. It's hard to say definitively, but as you're going to see, that's not going to stop them from suggesting that the lead designer is some kind of alt-right racist because, well, reasons. But they're not definitive reasons. Okay, back to the article. It's hard to say definitively one way or another whether they ended up in the sorts of backwoods towns that dot Kingdom Come's setting, or if they only appeared in major city centers. In responses to the ensuing controversy around representation, Vavra, a Gamergate supporter, good for him, mocked dissenters on Twitter with, among other things, this image of Martin Lawrence in the movie Black Knight. Yes. I haven't seen that movie, but I remember Martin Lawrence. That is funny. That is funny. And look, he has all white people in the background. Holy crap, Martin Lawrence is racist. Since then, a schism has formed around Kingdom Come. That schism would be the gaming press versus gamers. Some were hesitant to play the game because of the views of its most visible creator and what he seems to represent, not to mention how modern-day nationalistic biases might influence his team's choice of historical sources. Oh, geez, okay. Notice how they say what he seems to represent. It's a subtle jab at him. I mean, what does he seem to represent? Well, we'll find out a little later in the article. The buzzwords will be ticked off. And nationalistic biases. Well, there's nothing wrong with a little nationalism. There's not. You have a right to be proud of your people, your culture, and your history. Every right. And you have every right to represent it as authentically as the historical advisors you hired told you it should be represented. Back to the article. Vice's video game site Waypoint even refused to cover the game on those grounds. Well, screw them. Who the hell reads Vice anyways? In January of this year, Favre issued a statement retroactively recontextualizing his stance on Gamergate, claiming that for him it's always been about freedom of speech and the freedom of opinion and thoughts, rather than the clear sexism, racism, and harassment that the movement peddled in from the get-go. Okay, stop for a second here. To me, Gamergate's always been about freedom of opinion and freedom of thought, because that's what gamers themselves have always been about. This sexism, racism, harassment. I mean, you disagree with these SJWs on anything, and they will call you sexist, racist, transphobic, misogynist, whatever smear they can think of. That's not what Gamergate stands for at all. Back to the article. I am not a friend of any kind of totalitarian rule and consider the accusation that I am a Nazi or close to any ideology that even remotely goes in that direction, therefore, as absurd, even personally offensive, he added. Okay, stop for a second. The Czechs had to deal with the Soviets. The Soviets were totalitarians. They would try to wipe a people's history, their religion, their values from their minds, and certainly from the young. They wanted to assassinate it because the only thing that matters to a totalitarian is loyalty and worship of the state, specifically the party that controls the state. It is a power cult. That is it. So a Czech, comparing him to some sort of totalitarian is, in fact, deeply offensive because it wasn't that long ago when the Czechs had to deal with the real thing. And these upper-class white SJWs, the most hardest thing they've ever gone through in life, is when Daddy had to buy them a used Range Rover instead of a brand spanking new one. Back to the article. However, others have rallied around Kingdom Come partially because they see its all-white cast and its developers' support of Gamergate as a big middle finger to social justice warriors, and I would be right with them. And the all-white cast, it just makes sense to have an all-white cast in a historical Bohemia or anywhere in Europe. So here's some of the Steam comments here. Let it be known that I am paying full price for this game. The SJW boycott. Kingdom Come game sells well despite SJW complaints. SJW is complaining about it equals instant buy for me. Good for you, man. This is the game that made SJWs get. Okay, I love it. SJW's complaint about it. Instant buy for me, wrote one Steam user on the game's discussion board. Not even joking. I was going to wait a few months for the price to drop and patches to hit, but now I see SJWs are complaining. I'm going to buy it immediately. Okay, this guy probably was joking, but he's just rubbing a little salt in the wounds there. This game is a lesson to developers, wrote another. The budget was a fraction of that spent on the SJW game Wolfenstein 2, yet its sales are dwarfing it. Pandering to the left will destroy your business. Carry on at your peril. This remark here is key. This is why Kotaku is now having to take notice of this game and why Vice now has to talk about it after ignoring it. It sold over 1 million copies. It's on its way to sell 2 million or more. This certainly could be a sign of things to come, and I certainly hope so, because it makes these SJWs in the media, it makes the gaming press look as small as they really are. Back to the article. These days, alt-right groups, and worse, thrive on Steam because it's not moderated in any consistent way. Read, censored in any consistent way. With Valve taking a hands-off approach and leaving developers to enforce rule sets that apply in their personal community spaces and nowhere else. It's even more lax than notoriously troubled platforms like YouTube and Twitter. I guess when YouTube and Twitter aren't locking out conservative accounts or center-left accounts that piss off the wrong SJW. Steam's community is, of course, not made up entirely of users who engage in these sorts of behaviors, but it's become one of the platform's most prominent cultures. No, it hasn't. They're just gamers being gamers by gamers for gamers. You would not understand that because you're not a gamer. In the wake of the game's release, people have also done things like releasing a mod that gives dark skin to key character Captain Bernard as a joke. Now that's funny right there. I don't care who you are, that's funny right there. The mod is titled Inclusive Captain Bernard, and it got over 1,000 upvotes on Kingdom Come subreddit, as it should have, in reaction to Eurogamer's review of the game, which criticized its politics. No one cares about your politics, Eurogamer. Stick to the gameplay. It's the second most upvoted mod on the subreddit, beating out even the Save Anywhere mod that lets you skip the Save Your Schnapps. The game itself, however, is largely free of overtly racist or sexist rhetoric. So what's the problem? What's there hasn't been enough to set off most people's alarms, even though it's very much a game about white manly men doing white manly things. Nothing wrong with that in itself. Women mostly being supportive mother-esque figures or prostitutes. Well, prostitution is the oldest profession in the world, and in a feudal society, a time of scarcity and shared sacrifice, there would be a lot of prostitutes, and mothers is the most important profession in the world. So there's nothing wrong with portraying women as mothers, especially in a society like that where men are clearly more expendable and women aren't because they're mothers. Back to the article. When they get to be characters at all, okay. Gay villains and little details like a charisma buff called alpha male that you get for having sex with women at bathhouses. Imagine if you had sex with men at bathhouses. BioWare would probably give you 2 alpha points instead of, or twice the alpha points. Or if the woman had an abortion, you get triple the alpha points. The game also frequently depicts Cumans, a Turkic nomadic group, as killers and savages. Okay, I'm not familiar with the ethnic term Cumans here, if I'm even saying it right, but I am familiar with the Turks from that time. Vlad the Impaler fought them. The Turks were vicious, like the Moors. They were vicious invaders. Vlad the Impaler learned impaling from the Turks. They did it to his people first, so he did it back to them. And he did it at a very large number of people to scare them and say, hey, look, we can be just as sick and vicious as you can. The Turks back then were clearly the enemies of the Czechs, so it makes sense they would be portrayed as the bad guys because they were the bad guys to ancient Bohemia or historical Bohemia. Back to the article. Other foreign, non-Czech peoples, Hungarians and Germans, don't fare much better. Well, that's interesting. The Hungarians are actually comprised of an ethnic group that is foreign to Europe. They were invaders themselves and conquerors, and they settled in Hungary. Their language has nothing in common with historical European languages, the Romantic languages. It's their own dialect. So, um, and now they are the most nationalistic and pro-European people in Europe. They're against the EU open borders program. They don't want millions of economic migrants coming into their country and drowning out their domestic culture. Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, has been likened to an alt-right figure by the SJW media. But here, they're victims because when they serve their purpose as victims here, so they're being used. The Germans back then, they were the Anglo-Saxon people. They were often the money changers and the bankers. They weren't very popular people. Bankers and money changers usually aren't, especially when they're living high and everyone else is impoverished. So I don't see a problem here historically that they would be seen as the bad guys. The game can be, in places, alarmingly careless and unnuanced, but unfortunately, that's par for the course in this genre. Kingdom Come offers a white default perspective that values power, but in that sense, it's not all that different from other large-scale RPGs, or the historical time. As upset as I am by the whole low-key white nationalism of that Kingdom Come Deliverance game and its popularity, game developer critic Liz Ryerson, who no one's ever heard about, wrote on Twitter, I have to admit it kindly only echoes the bland white Eurocentrism in the most mainstream fantasy media like Skyrim. She added in a direct message that modern fantasy powerhouses like Game of Thrones and Skyrim are still very much Eurocentric male power fantasies that contain only barely coded racial stereotypes like the brown red guard characters being good at getting angry and physical activity. Um, wow. Barely coded racial stereotypes. These SJW people, these moral authoritarians, they love to claim that if something's not overtly racist, then there's a dog whistle that only they can hear. So if you just listen to them, they will show you the way because they have some esoteric knowledge, some platonic sense that you and everyone else don't have. And as for the Red Guards, okay, Red Guards are a black race in the Elder Scrolls mythos who seem to me like a combination of the Japanese and the Mongols. They're a warrior. They're a warrior class. They're noble. They're like Genghis Khan meets samurai, and I think they're a very positive depiction of black people, considering Africa throughout history could not build a two-story building, yet the Red Guard have huge, vibrant civilizations and architecture, and it's very impressive. So the Red Guards are a positive depiction, in my opinion. Not historically accurate, but positive. Back to the article. Kingdom Come's most troubling rhetorical gymnastics trick then is one that people who've been playing games for a while are pretty used to. While people are happy to cite a commitment to historical accuracy to explain Kingdom Come's anti-diversity stance, just because it's not your type of diversity doesn't mean it's anti-diversity. That didn't stop its developers from adding borderline magical potions, overt references to other video games, and heaps of modern slang in the conversational dialogue. As with so much else about Kingdom Come, where people draw the line on immersion is a choice, not something set in stone. Okay, they added, I haven't played Kingdom Come yet. I'm going to, life, it's keeping me away from it right now. But the magical potions, I've read there's a potion that helps you see at night. A lot of people don't like playing these games at night because it's hard to see. It just is. I played EverQuest, the original one, back in the day, and it was hard to see at night. Sometimes I would wait for the night cycle to end, and a lot of people still do that today. It's not fun. And carrying a torch, it takes up a free hand. Usually you want a shield or a sword in that hand. So for playability reasons, they gave you a magical potion to help you see at night, whatever. Overt references to other games. All games do this, not a big deal. And heaps of modern slang. I don't know how heaping the modern slang is. But if it helps you understand what's going on better, then it's useful. So they're grasping at straws here to say why there weren't black people or gay people or gender parity in the game. All right, back to the article here. In Kingdom Come's popularity is reflective of the state of the RPG genre, the PC gaming landscape, and the priorities of its fans. It's a medieval game that flaunts its lack of fantasy elements while remaining very much a traditional white male power fantasy. It's a game that's supposed to prize immersion above all else, but in reality, it reveals that some players are willing to overlook pretty glaring glitches and inconsistency as long as they feel like they have choice and control. It is on many levels the game PC players have been saying they want for years, and it'll sit comfortably on the shelf next to the many similar games that came before it, and in all likelihood after it. And hopefully there will be many more games like it, because certainly in the past there were other games like it, and we love them. PC gamers, we love them. I play games on console, that's fine, but we love these types of games. And when it comes to things like forced diversity or modern political sensibilities working their way into a game, that is a very jarring, immersion breaking thing that breaks the escapism. So forcing in gay characters, black characters, something that would appeal to these journalists, and I put that in scare quotes, these type of people that become journalists, they want power, they want influence, they want to preach. And the only thing they really do is propaganda. They write propaganda. That's why you see it repeated constantly, this white male power fantasy. It's repetition, repetition, repetition. That is what propaganda is. You say it enough times, people will start to believe it, including the author himself. So, correction. The original version of this story misstated the nature of a photo tweeted out by Kingdom Come director Daniel Vavra. The photo is, in fact, a still from the movie Black Knight, which since corrected the errors. They didn't even recognize the movie with Martin Lawrence. They ignorant as always. So, with the success here of Kingdom Come, this could be a breaking point. I mean, this could be a crack in the floodgates. And hopefully these floodgates get blown wide open and people just stick to their vision and tell these SJWs to piss off, because I'm for diversity. That's fine. But this virtue signaling and this non-gaming related crap that these people want to put into games. I mean, it's crap in movies, it's crap in music, it's crap in comedy, it's crap in comic books. My gosh, Marvel's just a shadow of their former self. It destroys art, it destroys culture, and I just want to see them washed away. Demon out.